Scott Payne is 6'4", weighs 260 pounds, and is covered in tattoos. His background and presence made him the ideal candidate to infiltrate America's most violent criminal undergrounds. Undercover work relies on a harsh psychological paradox. Success requires building authentic human connections with the explicit intention of eventually betraying them. Scott put that paradox to the test with the Outlaws Motorcycle Club. He bonded with the gang by drinking, fighting, and riding alongside them, using his own personality to bridge the gap between agent and outlaw. During one vetting session, gang members ordered Scott into a tiny clubhouse bathroom and told him to strip. While armed men methodically felt through the fabric of his discarded jeans, they missed the recording device hidden in the seams. Scott solidified the case by organizing a fake drug protection operation. He convinced the outlaws to provide armed security for a deal involving 40 kilograms of cocaine and 1,000 pounds of marijuana. The emotional weight of the betrayal surfaced on the day of the arrests. Scott's closest friend in the gang called to warn him about the police raids, only to be arrested by a SWAT team less than an hour later. The outlaws were dangerous, but they operated on familiar terms, fighting for money and territory. Scott's next assignment would move him away from traditional organized crime and into a world where the goals were purely ideological. By April 2017, Scott found himself standing in an empty field in Alabama, blindfolded. He knelt in the dirt and was knighted with a sword, officially completing a naturalization ceremony to join the Ku Klux Klan. The FBI quickly pulled him from the case. The KKK was shrinking as its influence faded, but law enforcement had spotted a more lethal ideological threat taking form. Following the 2017 rallies in Charlottesville, Virginia, violent white supremacist networks began operating out in the open, using the chaos to recruit for a much more aggressive movement. This map shows the mechanics of accelerationism. The ideology claims that society is beyond saving and must be violently destroyed. By striking key nodes in the social grid, these groups hope to trigger a total collapse. They call this collapse the boogaloo. The goal is to shatter the existing system so isolated terror cells can seize control and establish white ethnostates. This ideology has already resulted in mass murder. Accelerationism inspired the shooter who murdered 9 black parishioners during a church service in Charleston, South Carolina. It also provided the blueprint for the attacker who murdered 51 people at 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. Domestic extremism has moved away from the visible hoods of the KKK. It is now a decentralized digital network focused entirely on apocalyptic mass violence. In 2019, Scott set his sights on infiltrating a neo-Nazi group known as the Base. He engineered a new digital footprint, posting extremist rhetoric on far-right social networks until the group reached out to recruit him. Joining required a rigorous digital vetting process. Scott spent weeks navigating encrypted emails and passing phone interviews with the group's founder, an American contractor based in Russia. The final test moved the operation from the digital world to the physical one. Scott was ordered to an abandoned concrete plant in Georgia for an in-person evaluation with the local cell. Cell members scanned Scott for wires before using an electronic wand on his truck. When the sensor reached the rear bumper, it began flashing. It was picking up the tracking device installed by his case team. Scott pointed to the overhead power lines and convinced the men that their equipment was picking up electrical interference. They accepted the explanation and allowed him to stay. This breed of digital native extremist is paranoid and technologically equipped. Their sophistication made them far more difficult to infiltrate than the traditional criminals Scott had faced previously. By Halloween, Scott was attending a multi-day hate camp on a remote 100-acre farm. Recruits ran tactical combat drills and grappling exercises by day, and burned Bibles and American flags by night. The violence escalated during a pagan ritual. While under the influence of LSD, the cell members stole a goat, decapitated it, and ritualistically consumed its blood. The rhetoric soon turned into a detailed plot to assassinate an Antifa couple in Georgia. The cell members planned to tape their clothes shut and wear adult diapers to avoid leaving any DNA at the scene. Simultaneously, a separate cell in Maryland mapped out an attack on a gun rights rally in Virginia. They intended to fire into the crowd to trigger a crossfire. and ignite a nationwide race war. The group moved from online rhetoric to active terror plots. Between the ritual sacrifices and the detailed blueprints for murder, the threat had transitioned into something immediate and lethal. Scott engineered the takedown by faking a mechanical breakdown in his truck. When the cell leader stepped out to help, a SWAT team crested the hill and executed the arrest without a firefight. The coordinated raids dismantled the cell. Multiple members of the base were convicted and handed federal prison sentences ranging from 6 to 13 years. While this specific cell was dismantled, the accelerationist ideology remains active. These decentralized networks operate through encrypted digital channels, hidden within everyday American communities.